Welcome to the Invincible Innovation Show, the podcast for changemakers. Each week, I talk to the most fascinating entrepreneurs and innovation leaders about innovation, strategy, and design. Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about growth secrets, corporate innovation, going from corporate innovation to rapid experimentation to growth hacking. It's going to be just so interesting. Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live Show. I'm so glad that you're here. I am back like after a month or month and a half, more or less. I'm happy to be here. I'm Mazor, Kario, product innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And I have a very special guest. Hey, Taylor. Great to
Hey.
see you. Taylor Ryan, growth hacker and founder of Klint Marketing, is going to be my guest. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're so invited to join the discussion and ask questions. And now we can start. Let's start about talking about addressing innovation and what like these big, large organizations are facing right now and in general, in order to do innovation in general.
Yeah, I mean, my experience has been that it often comes from either a place of getting worried about what's happening within the market, or watching a competitor start to take off, or seeing revenue start to slump. And by that time, it's almost too late, you know? So,
Right.
in many cases, yeah, I think a lot of people have conversations around the concept of innovation. It's actually quite rare to see it take place and the leadership push it forward to the point that you're actually able to generate something in the way of traction and revenue, because it doesn't start on Monday and finish on Friday and everybody's high-fiving themselves saying, hey, job well done.
Yeah.
So yeah, every industry, every company, small, medium, and large, needs to consider this as kind of part of their roadmap and part of the scaling effects that happen within companies. And the goal is ultimately, how do we get further along, either revenue wise, product wise, or just in our future growth as a company.
And what do you think is stopping them from really
Uh,
doing it?
Old systems. I mean, there's so many different things, but for me, it's bureaucracy, which kind of hampers speed. And I'm sure you've experienced that, where the things that might happen in smaller companies or just more agile companies take months to just get approval before they're actually starting to be implemented. I've also found that the skill sets are totally backwards. I've come into a lot of larger companies, and sometimes it's been pharmaceutical, sometimes it's more energy companies, but it's always the same thing, where you have people that are so used to existing processes and systems that have been in place for decades. It's very difficult to kind of break from that and say, look, you need to get something launched within the next 3 to 6 months. What's that going to take? And if they're going through these old systems, forget about it.
Yeah, and I think that the way that they're thinking is very structured because they have so much to lose, so they're keeping what they have all the time. And when you're small and agile, maybe even a startup, like what could you lose? You just can win if you run forward and you trying your things and going from ideas to something which is tangible, testing it out.
Yeah.
And
Well, to that point, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, like there's two kind of sides to that coin. So like I've found that leadership doesn't want to put their name on the line, right? So if I don't get the goal, or if I don't reach kind of the point of, this is what we've said we would do with this amount of money and this period of time, it reflects really poorly on them. That's a huge risk professionally. I think the other side is ultimately, yeah, nobody wants to do an innovation project, because ultimately you don't have that 6 month turnaround of initiatives. It's anywhere from a year to 3 years. And if I'm basing something in the way of bonuses, which is a big deal within corporates, it's kind of what you bank on every quarter and every year. If you're not reaching these measurable goals, then you can't really expect to grab something in the way of a really nice bonus. So I've talked with plenty of people that are running innovation departments, and they're like, yeah, I don't really have the ability to tie all of my goals to something in the way of real growth, because the concern is nobody would take this job knowing that they have to do that. And I think on the other side, what I was describing before was the people that are actually doing the work don't always have the skill sets. So sorry, I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of clarify. There's kind of two sides of that, but
Yeah.
I don't know. You've had experience with it, or what are your thoughts? Do you think it's kind of all the same, or it has kind of this leadership versus the people doing the work?
I think that the high level leadership are very aware of the fact they need to innovate. And many of the people doing like the operations are into doing things differently and changing. And the middle management is always the ones who gets these bonuses. And if you don't change the incentivation method, they will keep on doing what they're supposed to do, which is keeping the revenues running, right? This is
Yeah,
what they're supposed to do. And if you want to really do something which is innovative and you need to change the processes, you need to do it top down too. It's not enough to tell the people, yeah, have ideas, change what you're doing, change your departments, whatever. It has to come from something which is very structured and not just, words.
totally agreed. Yeah, well put.
Yeah. So how do we challenge these existing structures of innovation in these big firms?
Well, I think you have to redefine what success looks like, and I also think it's really dependent on the business model. My experience has been a lot of startup infusion within corporates, and I think often there's a real big chasm or difference between how the two operate. And what ends up happening is you kind of have this external innovation that happens at like an innovation lab, where you don't have a lot of middle level managers coming in and stripping out talent, and you let these people do what they do best, which is create. And ultimately, yeah, you can start to actually see like, cool, do they have an MVP? Yes. Have they actually gotten some level of traction, whether it's letters of affirmation from clients saying, like potential clients saying, yes, I would use this once it's built. It's the same way that you go about building a startup. And so I would say that if you looked at it almost as like startups being built inside of a company that are maybe a little less hands-on from the standpoint of middle management and upper management, I think you're able to really see kind of the same benchmarks that you get out of maybe the way that an accelerator would work. Whereas I do think when it's an internal project and you're taking people off of existing projects and putting them all on this new big thing, people end up spending just an absurd amount of money. And I've been on those contracts on stuff that would maybe take me and my team a month to do, where it's like, okay, cool. You have a new conversion flow, new website, and you want to generate a ton of content. Got you. That's maybe a 3-month gig, maybe. And you come into these projects and it's like, well, hold on, you guys have been doing this for 12 months. Like, what's going on? And to not have at least an understanding of how long it ordinarily takes, I think you really run the risk of just spending way too much time, energy, and effort to see nothing happen.
Yeah.
But that's my perspective. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I think that in general, when you work with people who are like business owners and they work with lots of environments and lots of companies, they see things differently than someone who's like maybe 5, 10 years in the same company. And for him, he gets his salary if he's doing a good job or not, if he's accelerating or not. That's what he's doing, right? And as a business owner, if you don't do the best, you will not be chosen and somebody else will be chosen, right? So you need to do the best way of handling the effort, the money, the resources, and everything needs to be accelerated. And you don't have this benefit of doing things calmly. And for me, because I come from in Israel, everything is going fast and the startups are really, really fast. And when I go to these companies, sometimes I think like, how can you work so slow? It's like so hard for me just to handle the fact that each decision takes time.
Yep.
It's like anything they need to execute takes so much time, because they don't feel a startup knows exactly that they have these kind of like, that's the limits, that's the time, that's the resources, we need to do the best that we can within it. and you don't have this like people so engaged and motivated when you just get your salary whatever, like you don't need to do anything more than what you're doing right now.
I totally agree. I think that's why it makes it kind of this vicious cycle that exists. The amount of companies that have come and gone from, you know what? I have statistics on this. Hold on, give me a second.
Wow, I
I
would love
pulled
to
up
see.
I had pulled up this old presentation that I had put together, just to refer to every once in a while as notes. And every so often, I remember kind of these crazy statistics. I don't have it in front of
Mhm,
me, can't get it up,
mhm,
but it was basically the amount of companies that were on the Fortune 500 list between it was 1954 to 2016. I think it was basically of the 500 companies that were originally there, you were looking at a total of like 13 or 14. And so all of these big companies, they do the right thing for too long. And also, when you're in a large organization, life is friggin' amazing. Like, you get all the great perks, you get an amazing salary. There is no sense of urgency. It's like, look, I have arrived. I've made it. I'm working at IBM, or I'm working at whatever the big company is. Why on earth would you strive to outdo anybody else in the market, other than to have kind of your own sense of self-worth, which after a certain point, if I'm making 250 grand a year, do I really care that much? Is it going to affect me if I pump out a couple more units, or I really bust my butt in order to make these goals that I think are arbitrary to begin with? Probably not. But I think that level of passion that comes out of startups, you can't really duplicate it. And that's why it's always that death by a thousand cuts. It's the big company. It's like, oh, we're never going to get disrupted. We've been the market leader for 10 years. And then you turn around, it's like, wow, that happened pretty quick. And it's like, yeah, I know, because you guys lost track of what made you great to begin with. And I think that's just called progress. If there was always one company on top forever, I think it'd be a very boring kind of space to be in general. But
yeah.
yeah,
But don't you feel that the big tech companies are so sophisticated right now that it will be so hard to to win anything against them, especially like companies like Amazon doing everything. They are always innovating, always opening new things or buying new startups, or like they are always on this quest for something which is more. How can a small company really compete with that? It's like it's
depends
very
on,
different in that
yeah.
case.
I totally agree. I think it's gotten a lot more challenging. I had a fun moment with some of these people. I live in Copenhagen, Denmark, and it's a much smaller ecosystem than I'm used to. When I got here in 2016, it was, yeah, just kind of blossoming. And I had come from Washington, D.C., where the startup ecosystem had been there for a good 20 years. And if you go even further west, thing had been going for a good 40, 50 years.
Right.
But it's so interesting sitting and talking with these people, because they were sharing all these amazing stories of launch parties and how they had no idea what they were doing, and they got a ton of funding and all these things. And they're like, oh God, those were the days. Now it's different. And I'm like, yeah, you have to have talent. And before,
Yeah.
you just had to show up. I think
Yeah.
now it creates such a competitive market space that it makes it so much more interesting to be in a competitive level. I do think that you'll eventually see the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons eventually disintegrate and give way to something that we're not familiar with right now. Every social network that you've seen, nobody's talking about MySpace today. I have so many arguments with my girlfriend on a regular basis. She's like, Facebook's for old people. And it's like, well, I'm
Yeah.
using Facebook. Pardon me. This will continue to be the same way, whether it's a marketplace or for hosting or for shopping. People that are very concerned about the way that they search, maybe they don't want to use Google anymore. Google makes up like 98% of all searches these days. But as DuckDuckGo is continuing to gain momentum, people are realizing, like, hey, I don't want to be shown a ton of ads. I'd actually like to be able to generate my own revenue off of whatever I'm shown. That will take the place. It's just on a long enough timeline, you have to kind of see where things are eventually going. But yeah, in our
Yeah.
lifetime, I think you'll probably end up seeing, some of these giants eventually kind of go under. And Bezos has said that about his own company. He was like, I would be shocked if Amazon doesn't declare bankruptcy at some point. And you can see that in the stock prices. The most overinflated stock prices are Facebook, Amazon, and Google. And, at some point,
Apple.
Apple, yes, sorry, and Apple, good call. Yeah, at some point, I think the market will correct, and I do think that great ideas have a way of being sussed out. It's what a meritocracy is all about. So, yeah, it is challenging, but if you have some talent, I think you can do a lot of really interesting
Yeah.
things.
I think it's more than talent because we have the methods. Like when I started working with startups, let's say 15 years ago, we didn't have all these methods how to do things like faster, but fast, yeah, but with thought and strategy, which is that was added afterwards, right?
Yes,
I could say like in the beginning, they just tried things out and failed and tried something else. And now they know better how to do it. And one of the things that I feel like in Israel that got better are the marketing efforts, because we had the execution for the development, but we are not as good in the marketing with the strategy for growing. And this is something that only like in the last like 7, 8 years, it got bigger in Israel, just the growth, because we were called the startup nation because everything was a
startup
startup, and
nation,
then
I
it
like that.
startup nation and everything,
That's
it was
cool.
like a startup, and then you had this exit and that's it. And now many companies say no, we're going to grow it for ourselves, not for someone who is like a bigger company acquiring us. And therefore they are making so much more efforts in measuring things. And I think that the capabilities of marketing and measurements are so much better these days than like 5 years ago even. And then they are getting so big afterwards, like, and it wasn't like back then everybody thought about the exit. When do we get the exit? Like, yeah, 3 years, we're done, we're gonna
Sure.
we're gonna do it, or not. If not, we're failing, that's it. So the fact that companies are understanding that, and I think it's not only in Israel, it's very big in Israel because we had so many startups, and only in the last few years they grew and decided to IPO and everything.
Yeah.
But do you feel that in Denmark? Do you see the same thing?
Well, I think Denmark has a habit of thinking that it's it's in the
Mhm.
future. It's beyond the looking glass. I do think startups in general have a much easier time of it than ever before. Access to money is crazy easy these days. I remember going out and trying to get investors to just hear a pitch back in Washington D.C. and this was probably like 2014, 2013. It was really hard to just get in front of somebody. The barrier to entry on that is so much lower because there's a lot more VC capital just kind of floating around. I also think that people are a bit more. I can't remember the phrase for this, but like it's kind of the theology of like everything goes to zero. So like in the old days, like you used to have to pay for email, you used to have to pay for certain social media platforms. And as things became more commonplace, it goes to either a free or freemium type situation. And I think you'll see that with also building startups, where it used to be so difficult to build your own website. Then this crazy kind of CMS came out called WordPress. And now everybody's like, dude, I can get a WordPress website up in less than an hour and it's actually functional. I think you'll see that with products as well. So like Bubble is this really fascinating platform along with like Angora that allows you to just plug in different APIs. And I genuinely believe within the at least next 10 to 15 years, you will probably see the first single person company that reaches 1 billion in sales within its first year of business. The barrier to entry is so low, and that means anybody can do it. Anybody can learn my job, which is kind of scary when you think about it. You can get on YouTube and you can watch all these creators put together the same stuff that I've been doing for years. It's taken me forever to gain traction. Their hope is that they get a little bit of exposure by giving away some of their best stuff. But the reality is, yeah, anybody can build this stuff, which makes it really interesting, but also uber competitive. So, yeah, my experience with the startup scene is that I think before you really did actually have to, yeah, you had to have some good connections. you had to have something in the way of, I think you still need good timing. But I do think it's a heck of a lot easier to go from 0 to 1 than it ever has in any time in the world's existence. Like, it's at your fingertips. And I'm sure it's the same in most other startup cities. Is, yeah, you don't need that much to get off the ground. I think it is a lot more difficult to go from 2 to 10 or 10 to 100, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a different world these days.
Yeah, I agree that the starting points and the few like first steps could be easy, but I think that really growing, if we're talking about growth, I think it's harder today to get the growth because there is so much like competition on all the media, on all the uh, wherever you're going. It could be like in email, everybody's getting these emails. It could be like in social media, it could be like funnels, whatever. It's so hard to get these people involved. And if you're not really good in marketing, you don't have any chance, as I see it. Like even a small
Yeah.
or a big company, you need to really know that. And when we're talking about the gap between small companies and these like large giants, so they're saying like we're a known brand, we don't need to do that much efforts in marketing. We have what we have, everybody knows us, and we have our clients, and that's it. But when it comes to a new thing, they're like falling behind, and their CMO is like, I know, like in letters, whatever. I know where they are, but they're
Yeah.
not in the pace of these really fast moving companies who are just mastering it.
Totally agreed. I did a presentation that I wouldn't say it got me in trouble, but I definitely had I had some people that were not happy with me afterwards, and it was, I guess it was 2019. Like, it's so crazy how the time flies with like COVID.
Right.
But yeah, I had done this presentation on why major brands are ditching the CMO job title. I had found this like really great article off of Adage, and it was basically about it was like 2018, 2019, where all of these large organizations were dropping the chief marketing officer because what ended up happening was you have all these people that are like, I'm a branding person, strategy, storytelling. And it's like, cool, that's cute. And I love it, but I want to show data. So show me what type of storytelling works the best on what channel, and show me what your conversion rate is and how I can tie a number figure to that so we can duplicate it across channels. And by and large, most of them are like, I don't do that. I'm a fancy marketer. And it's like, no, hold on, what does that mean? And you start to drill down into it and you realize that these are people that actually got into a real technical environment way late in the game. And in order to keep up with a wave that's moving at breakneck speed, you either stick to one very specific thing, or you just kind of give up and say, you know what, I have a holistic approach. You use buzzwords, doesn't mean anything. And ultimately, people get frustrated with you and say, hey, look, I can do that job too. And that was kind of like the big picture of like the whole idea of marketing has kind of had this schism. There's the old branding and strategy marketing, and now there's this really technical data driven type marketer that is changing the way that we think of marketing. And marketing has kind of overtaken all aspects of sales and all kinds of areas that nobody ever thought it would be a part of product. So the way that marketing works in 2021 and beyond is nothing like in the past. We're talking zero touch conversions, where if I'm so good at what I do and I've targeted you so well and I've done the outreach or whatever the mechanism was to get in front of you and you love it, then I don't need a salesperson. I don't need product people. I can sell. I can sell whatever the product or solution is till the cows come home. I've been working on crypto projects super recently, and that's blowing my mind because you don't actually have to deliver anything. It's just all based off of speculation and the idea of how amazing something is, which is a bit of storytelling. But if you reach the right amount of people using a bit of growth hacking, then you could easily push whatever coin it is that you're trying to hawk way above all the others because it is pure speculation. And I think you're seeing these marketplaces pop up, whether it's NFTs, whether it's influencer marketing, where it doesn't even matter what they're selling. It's because you can get eyes on a product that people go for it. And it's just a
Yeah.
crazy time to be alive and realizing that if you pair the storytelling with the technical side, then you have something. But you really can't just be a storyteller these days.
Yeah. So what you're saying, they're just too high level and they're not into the operations, which is like the numbers, which is the results actually. And some, sometimes people say like strategy is so much more important than like the real down to earth operations when the rubber hits the road. And this is where it happens, right? With the numbers, with these very small details of how to take people and how to cut the market and how to reach the right audience. And if you don't have that capability, which is sometimes very complex, in the past you had like, I know, two ways more or less. You have like email and maybe something that you've done through the website. That's it. And now you have so many ways of reaching people, and so many ways to get these eyeballs and get interest. Once you
Yes.
understand that, it's like it could be so much work just to handle these like all these like campaigns and numbers and everything.
Can I
And it's
share my
hard.
screen? I'm like
Sure.
super jazzed up on this, and I wanted to show just a couple of quick things. So like,
Sure.
you can see this hopefully, right?
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, this was basically all the companies in 2019 that had publicly fired their chief marketing officer.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean that was like it's old school
Yeah.
companies, it's every
I'm gonna
industry.
just mention some of them because we have like people on podcasts. It's Uber,
Ah,
Lyft, Unilever, Walmart, Kraft, Hyatt, McDonald's, Taco Bell. It's
yeah.
lots of company, big
I mean,
companies.
it's tons and it's crazy. And I think one of the big shifts that you're seeing in this was that same year, 2019, digital media spend had finally overtaken traditional media spend. That wasn't that long ago. Like that was like 3 years ago. People are like,
Wow.
no, 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 we got to do more billboards and we got to put commercials on TV. Nobody has watched a television advertisement outside of the Super Bowl in probably the last 10 years. But here we are, like, it's people that are in charge, like, this worked in the 80s and I was on top. I invented the piano key necktie. I invented it. And the reality is, it's like, dude, stop trying to do stuff that didn't work like last year, 10 years ago. This is a completely different animal. And this is why the people that are in charge within these larger organizations are being shown the door because they're trying to use the same methodologies of what worked 20 years ago, 15 years ago in an ecosystem where it is so not there. It's
Right.
just crazy. So I get
It
super
is.
jazzed up about this because I meet people like this on rare occasions, and it's like the Wizard of Oz, where like you get to meet the wizard, and it's just some old man pulling levers and stuff, and it's like, oh, I thought you were like magic or something, and it's just wildly
Yeah.
disappointing, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it is. When I think about it, it's like it seems like the old generation of how they understood the way people operate and the way that advertising is operating and branding. It's so much different than what we're doing usually. Like right now, the you could be a brand and you don't have to be Disney, right? So you don't need to
True.
invest like 30 years in your name just because you're a brand for your specific audience and for your specific market. And you don't have to reach everyone, and you don't have to do things which are so expensive in a way. If you have these ads and billboards and TV commercials which are so expensive, you could do something which is like just having a YouTuber that is connected to your audience, doing something in like, I know, hundredth of price, thousands of a price. I know
Yes.
it's
Have
it's so
you
much easier.
I'm curious, have you seen kind of this new phenomenon on TikTok and what the major brands are trying to do with influencers on TikTok?
No, tell me about it.
So it's kind of what you're describing, which in essence, you have a marketing manager, usually in kind of their early to mid 20s, and they are the face of that brand from the standpoint of creating media every single day for whether it's Johnson and Johnson or Unilever or Doritos or whoever it is. And of course, the individual doesn't own any of the material that they put out. It's purely for their company, but they've realized consistency works, and if they can find the right quirky person, it's kind of like having Flo from what's the insurance commercials, or I don't know. There's so many. why am I drawing a blank right now? I need more coffee. That's why. But it's
Still early.
basically yeah, exactly. Monday morning. It's basically their version of a spokesperson, but in a more raw form. And you're seeing this, I see this with ads all the time. So when I'm running display ads, video ads on YouTube, I actually get more engagement, and TikTok for that matter. I get more engagement off the stuff that looks like it's a little rougher around the edges. The lighting isn't perfect. The audio isn't like the high end audio, crystal clear. It's recorded off of a phone. You're
Yeah.
consistently getting better engagement because that's what people assume is genuine. And if you are marketing this genuine kind of thing about your brand, all of a sudden you're catching more people and they're like, hold on, what's this guy talking about? Versus, bah, it's a commercial. Get me out of this. We all can
Yeah.
recognize kind of this different look. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you know what? That reminds me, my son is like going into these YouTubers that he loves, and he always shows me like things, and they're really smart. They're doing
Yeah.
things so sophisticated, like they're going into the details of analysis of something, and you see that they're really, really smart people. But what he wanted to show me that YouTube had this like a yearly I know clip for what has happened this year on YouTube, and
Yeah, yeah,
everybody
yeah.
hated it because
It's
it
with
was
Will
not
Smith more
genuine.
recently,
It,
right?
it didn't look at yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
YouTube trying to say what had happened in our platform, and everybody hated it because the real things is like this YouTuber is fighting this YouTuber. This is the real like authentic things, and they were very you know
Out of touch. Like,
yeah, yeah. It's like they were too commercialized in a sense. They wanted to show what they wanted to the YouTube year to be. And they got so many, unlike, and all the comments were against them because these people who are watching, and they're like young people who are interested in these YouTubers, and for them they know them. For them, it's someone that they really know. They see them daily, they meet them, they know their family, they know their habits, they know everything.
yeah.
And now just creating from that something just for the revenue, for them it's like, no, it's not working for me. It's not authentic, which
There's
is
very
funny.
Yeah, I've seen that and I've watched it a few times to try to figure out exactly why it came off so inauthentic. And yeah, I do think it's that out of touch type of feeling. And you can tell when somebody's really trying to foist something onto you. It's like, hey, I'm one of you kids. There's a meme of "Gah, I'm so bad with like remembering stuff on Monday mornings. We have to do another one of these.
Another
Catch
one
me on
with all the
yeah.
memes and things that
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
remember.
Catch
We'll
me
try
like on
Thursday next time.
yeah, like Thursday, like morning, like I'm on it, sharp. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think we do see a lot of this out of touch stuff, and it sometimes makes the headlines. I think one of my favorite ads, and it's one of the reasons why I think I have a really good shot at growing my company quite well, is I watched the Peloton ad. Have you ever seen the
Yeah.
Peloton ad that got all the
No.
bad press? It was awful. And this is an ad agency from like New York City. It's like, that's what you guys flip out. That's what you guys got paid nearly, I'm sure, $500,000 to put together. Something that I probably could have done in high school. And it clearly comes off disingenuous and not really thought through.
Yeah.
It's that type of stuff that as an entrepreneur gives me inspiration, as somebody within marketing allows me to know like, wow, I still got a shot out here. If that can see the light of day, then the stuff that I know I can create will be a million times better. I just need kind of the right assembly of a great opportunity to throw it together. And hey, let's jam out. That kind of stuff. It fuels me. I've always had that, even when I've had, I think the other simile is like bad managers or bad bosses, where it should be an inspiration to you to say, like, wow, if this person is at this upper echelon, or this company has managed to accomplish all this, and I can see the inner workings and it's pretty rough, then maybe as an individual, you should use that as like, motivation, rocket fuel to push yourself forward. Because yeah,
Right.
that's pretty much what's given me my motivation for a long
Yeah.
time.
As a person, I'm always for the underdog. And it seems that that's a great time to be an underdog and to do things which are only for yourself, as you see it, very authentic, very specific. And you find these specific audience that are attached to what you feel and what you are expressing and the way that you're in, like in your daily life. And I think it's amazing to see that these people who are like nobody, like I know 5 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe, now they have so many people following them and really interested in what they have to say. And sometimes it's kind of stupid, but sometimes it's really smart what they're saying. And
True.
you don't have to get these like tons of resources to create this very sophisticated ad with the music and all the celebs and all of that, which is like, if I'm relating to someone and he's doing something in his like home basement even, I'm attached to him. It's something in my
Yeah.
heart. I don't need anyone to play with my, with my feelings with the song and all these like the lighting and everything, which is it doesn't play like they're not agreeing to play this game. They're saying like,
Sure.
yeah, it's not my game. And the young people are, they know that it seems like it's not. They feel that it's fake for them because they're so
Yes.
used to getting everything which is raw and like very like, if somebody, I know that there is this tech guy who has the lots of like followers. I'm not into tech, that like all the phones and all the gadgets,
Sure.
and my son is always seeing him, and you see that on one side he's doing everything like the it's very professional. It looks really good. But what he's saying is just, this is what I think, and that's it. So at least the content of what he's doing is very, rough. This is what I think, and that's it. I'm doing it in a professional way, but still he has so many followers and so many people interested in just his opinion, and that's it. Yeah, and I think it's great just to think like, what would you say if somebody is like, I know, 17 years old right now? What would you tell him? What does he need to know in order to start his career?
Well, eh, I'm so worried about coming off and sounding like Gary Vaynerchuk from the audio. Are you familiar with? It's so weird that
Gary
people are
V.
like Gary V.
Yeah.
Like he does make a lot of really great points, and I think specifically one of the things that he says is like, go out there and just make stuff. And there's a point where that's not true, and there's some people that I consistently have seen make stuff for years. So like there was this one guy on LinkedIn. It's not like he's watching now. It's fine. So he used to always record videos with this super tight shirt on. His nipples were like sticking straight out, and he would be working out and just talking for 10 minutes at the camera, and you would see like no engagement. And he did this for I think it was well over a year, and it was so fascinating to see like, wow, like it doesn't phase you that nobody's engaged. You haven't mixed it up at all. It's just, here is my pure unfiltered life, and I'm speaking just kind of the same motivational things. It didn't get him anywhere. And I do see that with certain types of people that are making stuff that just doesn't work. And I think sometimes there's this kind of chasm of, I don't know, like I don't want to say like the damn younger kids these days, but there is a bit of that. So like the kids these days are told like, hey, so long as your heart's in it, you can do no wrong. And if you love what you do, sisterhood of the traveling pants, all these like silly things. Like, look, if you make like obnoxious, uninteresting, really poorly thought through and put together stuff, nobody cares. And I think we've seen this really exponentially with podcasts. I've seen a lot of this with like TikTok channels that just don't take off, because the reality is if you're not mixing it up, trying different things, constantly iterating, you're putting out the same garbage and you haven't learned anything new. I think the thing that makes something exceptional is it stands out in a really unique way. There was this one guy I went to school with, and Roy Edwards, great dude, and he's been building a podcast now for the last year, and I think he's just getting up to about 1,000 followers, which, hey, like, way to go. That's pretty good.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, I was watching this channel on TikTok where this guy had been feeding a seagull that was outside of his window for the last, I think it was 30 days. And he had something like 100,000 followers on just TikTok and close to a million on YouTube. And it's like, look, man, the
Yeah.
amount of effort that one puts into this versus that, but there's something to it,
Yeah,
like
I have
there's
to tell
something
you
there.
something really funny. I have young kids, and we have our favorite YouTuber, and he's a tortoise. He's a turtle,
Okay.
and he's just eating watermelon, and that's it. And we love seeing him, because
There you
he's
go.
taking the sound, and he's like,
Yeah.
and it's like we're just going and watching this turtle. And sometimes you say, like, why do I watch this turtle? I don't
Yeah.
know. I really don't know. Sometimes something is catching your attention, and it's like, and we're just sitting together, me and the kids. And it's like, it doesn't make sense. But
No,
this is what we're doing sometimes, not all day, but sometimes we're
of
going to
course.
see it. So sometimes you don't know what will catch.
Well, they've
this
certainly tapped
this
into
channel,
something there.
they have, like an iguana and a turtle and squirrels and then whatever, but the turtle is like number one.
I think it's
Which is so
fascinating that
funny.
yeah, that could be like a whole like following, and maybe you're not able to immediately monetize that, but I guarantee you there's something there that they figured out, and that's probably more watchable than a lot of the other things that people are pushing out at scale. So it's something
Yeah.
to think about and tease out what is there in this that people are gravitating towards. Can I do something that is a version of this mixed with something else? And I
you
think if
know
you tap into
what
that,
what
go
comes
ahead.
to my mind is enthusiasm. You see people engage and really into what they're doing, and it's catching, like, and you don't have this motivation, like all this enthusiasm. You don't have that in very calm environment, stable environment. There's something in this unease that you get when you go into these kinds of channels, or TikTok channels or YouTube channels, and you see these young people so engaged in what they're doing, and you cannot ignore it. And it's so important when you're doing something and you're enjoying it,
Yeah.
and you see that they're enjoying what they're doing, right? So it's so important. And for me, just thinking about people expressing themselves authentically in something that interests them is so much more than just going to your work, doing your job, getting paid. It's like very structured, and you see the gig economy is growing. I had one chapter about the gig economy. Everything is like very fast moving and changing very fast, and
Sure.
doing this and this and this, and not only one thing. 20 years, my parents worked in the same place for 20, 30 years, and it's like it's changing and it's like enabling people to express their talents better, I guess, and which is great, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's that old adage of, everybody should get their 15 minutes of fame. And I can't remember who said it, but now everybody gets 1 minute of fame to 15 people. And so, like, the
Yeah.
thought is you have much smaller audiences. I was going to mention earlier, I have a lot of young people that work with me, anywhere from 19 years old up to like late 20s. And we have these icebreakers when somebody new starts. And the question was, what's the most famous person that you've ever met? And what was the story around it? And pretty much everybody below the age of 25 was mentioning influencers that they had seen on the street or had waved to. And that to them is their new celebrity. And I've never heard of any of the people that they talked about, but that is their kind of 15 minutes of fame for the 15 people. It's really interesting, and it's a very different dynamic because the barrier to entry, as I was saying, is so low. Anybody can create this stuff, so it's a very different dynamic.
Sure. For sure. Okay, we're almost done with their time, even more than that, and still I have so much. Maybe we should have another one on
Sure.
some kind of a Thursday. So, so what's your number one tip for leaders who are like looking at this crazy markets changing so fast, especially right now? After Corona, everything accelerated. So
Yeah.
what's your number one tip for them?
I got to go on a really cool trip. I guess it was Yeah, wow, it was only like a week ago. I don't know, like time is just flying by, but yeah, I was working with this company that does water pumps, and it is by far not the sexiest thing in the world. But one of the things that I found really fascinating is their innovation department has kind of like it's completely buffered on either side from the company, meaning there's nobody running in there saying, excuse me, you guys need to deliver tomorrow or this thing's over. And I found the leadership within that innovation department was so unique because they were able to sit back and brutal honesty say, I have no idea what will work here. And this is why I've brought in experts in each of their fields. And I want to understand what it is that they know and understand that well enough so that I can start to support those ideas and move things forward. I think what you get, a lot of big companies have this where it's like the amount of ego that has shot through this person in order to get them on that
Yeah,
level is
yeah.
so absurd. And it's like, I am a wizard. I am the most brilliant person in the world. I can move earth and water. And it's like, yeah, but not really, dude. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's cute. But the reality is that type of arrogance when you're trying to build something brand new and believe that you have all the moving parts up here, like that dictatorship is so going to fail from the start. But
Yeah.
bringing in talent and saying, I need you guys to create, and I'm looking in this general direction, but give me a couple of models. Let's sit down and talk about it. Let's see what you guys think is the best thing. I don't know everything. I'm going to learn, but please tell me where you think this makes sense because your expertise is this. And sitting with engineers, aside from marketers, aside from leadership, like that was really cool. And I never see that when I go into larger companies. It's so siloed off, and it's also a massive dictatorship, which is super bizarre. So
Yeah. I
crystallizing it, I think just an open-minded leadership. Sorry.
Yeah, and being humble.
Yes.
And we have a nice comment here. Ilan is saying this is great, and then he asked us to make sure that we keep in the loop about this Thursday that we're planning
Oh,
for our
cool.
next time. So
Sure.
thank Ilan Arel, and I think it's a good way to capture what we're doing, because I think that we have this discussion and we could go further with it, but just keeping an open mind and thinking about all the possibilities and being humble is so important in everything that we do. Actually, it's not only in innovation. It's like keeping yourself in a measure which is like you can perceive this is my measure. I'm not more than that, and I'm
Yeah.
learning and I'm growing and I'm doing whatever I can in order to learn more, and that's it. It's not more than that. Like after so many years, I've been more than 20 years in the Israeli tech scene, and I've seen so many people, very smart people, fail and then try something else and learn from it. And if you don't have this capacity to just go from something which is very, very stable to something which is like, I don't know, and maybe I'll fail and I'll try something else, it's like,
Well
no
put.
way.
Yeah.
No way.
We got to jam out again.
Sure,
I got
we're gonna do
thoughts.
it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool.
Ilan said that was my minute of the 15 people.
Cool.
Yeah, like he's my celebrity right now, so it's the beginning. So thank you,
There you go.
Ilan, for your like listening. And Taylor, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed
Likewise.
talking to you, and we should do it again. We will do it again, I would say. We should.
Sounds great. Yeah. Don't threaten me with a good time. I'll be there. Sounds like fun.
Me too. And to all of you change makers out there, thank you for joining us. And if you want to learn more about what I do, go to invincibleinnovation.com. And I'll see you next week with another innovative, insightful talk. See ya. Bye. I'm Mazor Kario, and you've been listening to the Invincible Innovation Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, invincibleinnovation.com, where you can learn more about our programs and my book, Innovating Through Chaos. I'll be waiting for you next week in our next episode. Thank you for listening.